This
Andy, would
conference
you-
will now be recorded.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm Russ Willey, Community Development Director. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Tonight is the regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is November 4th, a Thursday evening. It is 5:31. I have determined that a quorum of the Planning Commission is in attendance with members Noel, Davis, Urban, Fichtner, DeVos, and Rosso present in the virtual format. Also, Cindy Moulton is back at the main ship running the controls for us. So thank you, Cindy. First item of business is an oath of office. But Ken, I mentioned to the other members before you joined us that Kelly has left the Planning Commission and she's relocated her family to North Mankato. So,
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, yeah, I am too. I hope she's going to be with us again next summer to help take care of the plantings and such, because they look so lovely this year with her and Dan Knight taking care of those. So, So with the removal of the oath of office, would anyone be inclined to move approval of the agenda?
I will so move.
We have a motion by Rosso. Is there a second?
Noel will second.
And a second by Noel. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. You have in your packet the minutes of the November 5th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Would there be a motion to approve or amend?
I'll move to approve them.
Motion by Fichtner,
Davis seconds.
second by Davis. All in favor of the minutes from November 5th as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you all. The unfinished business is a continuation of the discussion of the Baker Fieldhouse and the applicability of the Gateway Overlay Standards. We had a lengthy discussion at the last meeting, and I believe it was generally agreed that a two-tiered gateway system would be appropriate, and both for maintaining the appearance of the corridor and then to somewhat be mindful of the additional costs that would be applied to the development. So I have prepared an ordinance for your consideration that would provide for that two-tier, and we had mentioned tier one, if you will, the maintenance of the existing gateway ordinance as it would be applied to the properties on the east side of Old Minnesota Avenue. So between Old Minnesota Avenue and Highway 169, and then there's a few properties on the east side of 169 that would be maintaining existing regulations. And then a second or perhaps lower tier of standards to be applied to the properties lying west or abutting the Hallett's Pond, or in this instance, facing 3rd Street. I really don't probably think I need to go into it with much more detail. But I did provide a copy of the ordinance that would be proposed, and then there had been a resolution prepared for your consideration that would recommend that that ordinance amendment to the City Council, who would hold a public hearing on the matter and presumably accept your proposal. I'm going to open it up for comments or questions, and I'm going to start with Chairman Davis.
No comments or questions, and I think we should move it as soon.
Sure. Thank you. Member Noel?
No comments.
Member DeVos?
No comments. I think you did a great job writing it up. So.
Thank you. Member Urban?
No comments.
Fichtner?
Comments. I think this does what we're looking for.
Okay. Wonderful. Member Rosso?
Just to concur, well done. Are we addressing page 11, or which page are you dealing with?
Now I got to confess that I left my agenda on my desk, and so I looked online quick and scribbled some notes, Ken. So there should be one that would say an ordinance. That is what you're recommending the City Council adopt with the resolution, and that follows that.
Right. Yeah, that's fine. I have a question on the resolution, but not on the ordinance.
Oh, certainly. Go ahead.
If you don't have it with you, it's going to be difficult to discern this, but all the whereas explains very well what we discussed. and also the intent, and it describes the criteria. But where we get to number 1, which is the only digit there is, it addresses the it doesn't describe where or what the changes are. It does above it, but not. Hang on a second, I have to find my right page here. Bear with me.
It's on page 11 there.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go to page 9 if you would. The various whereas describes exactly what we're talking about, but if you go down to section 1 and then number 1, the third line down, it's about exterior wall finish. And let me just read this if I may. On the Gateway Overlay properties lying east of Old Minnesota Avenue, all exterior wall finishes on any building structure shall be predominantly constructed of the following materials, or a combination of the following materials. And it doesn't specify what they are. It does above that, so maybe it's redundant to have it there as well. But I wasn't quite sure what was going to go into the city code, if we need that specificity or not.
Actually, I'm calling it up on my laptop, my other laptop, my personal one here. So if you give me just one moment, I'll be able to get to page 11.
Yeah, actually page 9. Page 9. I
Page
was
9.
mistaken.
Okay. I also need to apologize. I think when I called the meeting to order, I said it was December 4th. It is December 3rd. Okay, I'm on page 9.
Okay, the very bottom.
Oh, yep, I can
If
explain
you go
that,
down
Ken.
to the third line. Okay.
Yep, so that is the only part of the ordinance that is being amended. The list of the appropriate building materials is staying the change. So since there were no alterations to that, it wasn't necessary to put it in the ordinance that is amended.
Okay.
So it'll just be that, basically that paragraph that'll be amended, and then the roster of the acceptable building materials, there's no changes to those. So that's why
Right,
it's not necessary to have in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Ken?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Everybody's had an opportunity to comment. If there's anything to add, please just go ahead and turn your microphone on. I think we can manage that. Or would anyone be inclined to move the resolution that recommends that the city council accept the ordinance?
DeVos will move the resolution.
A motion by DeVos. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second by Urban. Once again, now we have a motion on the floor. It'd be appropriate to go around for one more opportunity to comment. And this time we'll start with member Noel.
No comment, just to say thanks to this group and to the council for good conversation. I think this has been a really good compromise.
Thank you. Member DeVos.
No comment.
Member Urban.
No comment.
Member Fichtner. Member Rosso.
Again, just to reiterate what Shannon mentioned, well done, and thank you for making a modification to hopefully bring a very nice addition to town.
Thank you, Ken. Member Davis.
I concur.
Okay. No further discussion. I will call the roll, and I will start with Member DeVos.
Aye.
Member Urban.
Aye.
Member Fichtner.
Aye.
Member Rosso.
Aye.
Member Davis.
Aye.
And Member Noel.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Resolution's passed. The ordinance will be recommended to the city council. What we've got to do now is we've got to post 30 days notice of the intent to amend the ordinance. So I will work with Ms. Luker to get that scheduled on the city council for a public hearing then. I talked to Mr. Baker this afternoon. I will tell you that he is also going to be seeking that lot split that we talked at the last time. So when that is accomplished, he'd only have to have then the enhanced exterior on the facade facing 3rd Street, given that there would be another developable property between him and 3rd Street as it exists immediately south of IV. So he was thankful for the recommendation. He realizes he's going to have to spend maybe a couple $1,000s to save more thousands of dollars. So, and I think everything will be in place by the time that he'd look to get constructing when the frost is out of the ground. So thank you all for your diligence and work on that. The only thing I have to report, well, I got another one that wasn't on the agenda, but at the January meeting, you'll be reviewing the preliminary and final plat of Windsor Pond number 4. You've got a little bit of a preview. I will note that yesterday there were some very minor changes made to that, as happens from time to time, but by the time it's on your agenda, we'll make sure it's in a final form. I will also be drafting a development agreement for Windsor Pond, very similar to the development agreements that had been entered into with the first 3 phases, addressing storm sewer assessments, addressing parkland dedication, installation of utilities, etc. Very typical what most of you have seen from time to time. The only other report is I had a meeting scheduled with City Administrator Prafke today. We've been rescheduled for tomorrow morning. I intended to ask him about Lake Washington Marine. And I don't know if that meeting had taken place. The last I had heard is I was not going to be invited to that. So it was going to be legal counsel and the city administrator. So I don't have anything to report on that matter. Typically we ask if there's a question for me that maybe I can answer. Andy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I remember ages ago you asked about, or you reported on the Grandland sculpture park by the riverfront. What's the status of that?
Yeah, we had a plan prepared. This is at Levy Park by the chamber. Removing the playground, the antiquated, I would say, playground equipment, and actually perhaps providing a more of a public use for the park. I think the playground equipment gets limited use. So Matt Byers of Plaid, it's a design and architecture firm. He lives in the Alstrom House, if people are familiar with that. Former faculty at the University of Minnesota, and now he's devoting his full time to his practice. But he's done some very, very wonderful things. And the first design for the sculpture garden, sculpture park would have had some raised elements where you'd been above the ground, and you'd be able to view the art from many different perspectives, as Mr. Granland's son said that was intended. A lot of structural steel and about a $1.5 million price tag. So it was probably deemed that it was not ever going to be accomplished because the city is not intending to finance this other than some in-kind services and the provision of the land. So it was presented to the Art Center board. It was presented to the city council. Everybody loved the design, but in all practice, it probably was a pipe dream. So now Mr. The architect who again is donating his time to the project, we're going for a redesign, and now you kind of go into the ground, and so the sidewalk will go down and you'll have edges built up, and part of it you'll be above ground or on the ground, and it cut the price to about a third. And so Mr. Prafke is working with the Art Center. Mankato Area Foundation has agreed that they would be the fiscal agent, if you will, and collect the donations and maintain those until it's determined the project can go forward. The Granland children have to have some approval of this also. So working through Jonathan Granland, one of the children, we're trying to make sure that the design and how it would be presented would be fitting of the Granland name, if you will. So hopefully we're going to have a meeting here in the not too distant future and get a little bit of an update. But one of the issues is that from the Granland part of that Levy Park, it is proposed, or it may be required, that the pearly gates be not visible from the other portion of that Granland. I think it's felt that perhaps there's a conflict with something kitschy and then something that is certainly grand art. So Mr. Prafke, of course, in the way that he is able to do things like that, is trying to work through that process to make sure everybody's appeased. So that's kind of an update, Andy.
Yeah, thank you so much. That sounds like a good project. I'm glad that we're trying to make it happen in a way which is affordable.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else have something? Brad?
I just wanted to say I'm supportive of the Windsor Pond development, but I was just gonna say that that's an example of why on Monday night I was saying that when we we're discussing housing emphasis in St. Peter, that we don't necessarily need to put an emphasis on pursuing more retiree housing or such as that, because we already have developers who are focusing on that. So.
Okay. For the rest of you, the council had a goal session Monday, and one of the topics was Traverse Green, along with any other number of housing issues. The lack of multifamily, which hopefully is being cured by the 66, at least for the time being. The lack of just rentals, the lack of construction, and the significant lack of vacant apartments and developable single-family lots. From a survey of the Bolton and Mank GIS site, and then a short windshield survey that I did, I believe that outside of Traverse Green, there are less than a handful of single family lots that are immediately developable. So that is tragic. And if anyone read the Pat Henches retrospective in last weekend's newspaper, I'm going to talk to Paul Vogel and Mr. Henches, because it was mentioned that when Pat was hired 20 plus years ago, Mankato had a shortage of developable single family lots. And that certainly I don't think is the case today. Perhaps there's some strategies that they had, but the council talked about anything about Chapter 429, where the city finances the improvement and then it's paid back by an assessment, by trying to encourage or coordinate or work hand in hand with Habitat for Humanity. And some of them were more warmly received than the others. And what Brad is talking about was perhaps the thought to build smaller slab-on-grade homes out in Traverse Green, trying to perhaps attract that single household market, whether it be, or even a retiree market, whether it be the person buying their first house that doesn't have a family yet, a family of their own, perhaps would be a way to say that, or again, someone that's looking to just downsize towards retirement. So you can see the whole packet if you go on the city council's website and look up their agendas. It was the November 30th goal session, which is always a marathon for the council. So I'm grateful they let staff leave when our presentations are over. I mean, many hours oftentimes. So anything else? Joe?
Utility work on Nicollet Avenue. Are they putting in sewer, water? Is that in preparation for that other project going on up there?
Yeah, that's the grading for the 66 unit department. Clark Street construction won't start until next spring. The Clark Street that would be extended on the west side of Nicollet to provide the entrance to the development. But right now they're just doing their site grading and trying to find their soil balances and all that kind of other fun stuff. But they've made significant progress. The next step is they're hoping to get a footing and foundation plan so that they can begin putting that in, hopefully even yet this year. It's kind of been a late frost, but the building department has got a couple plan sets that are in front of that. And it does take some time to do the review, and to review the footings to determine the appropriate size, you have to pretty much know the engineering and the design of the full building. Hopefully Mr. Bussey, the building official, can get that review done in due time, and they can keep proceeding. But I would think they probably may have another week of grading left. We have prepared and delivered offers for easements from the Bell and Joanna Pell interests, who have the property just north of the Dry Basin or the Clark Street Basin on the east side of Nicollet Avenue, as well as the Bonnie Enns household, who owns the farmland just west of Warren Park. We need easements from both of those property owners to be able to meet the city's obligation, which they made on the 9th, to be install sewer line from Warren Park to that new multifamily development. So we've made offers. We've had the appraisal done. We've made an offer through third party. They've both been refused in consultation with the city attorney and reviewing Public Works Director Moulton and City Administrator Prafke. The counter offers are not acceptable. The city doesn't have the ability to force an easement, given that the properties are outside the city limits. So the city council talked about somewhat of essentially an involuntary annexation, given that the properties are completely surrounded by the existing city limits. That provides the city council with the ability to annex that property by passing an ordinance. It does not require a public hearing in front of the Municipal Boundary Adjustment Board. It does not require the owner's consent. It is proposed that if we are unable to negotiate the easements, that it would be appropriate, again, to meet the city's obligation that the council made on the 9th to provide a sewer line to the $7.5 million development, that we would involuntarily annex. And then after that would be completed, we would initiate eminent domain or condemnation and take the easements essentially. The property owners would still be paid a fair price, which if need be would ultimately be decided by the court. But the city would be able to get possession within 90 days then and begin construction of that sewer line. So the councils had a discussion of this in August, not just this property, but annexing all of the properties, because there are a number of others that are completely surrounded by the city limits. You can go back and look at that agenda packet if you would like. It somewhat has a staff's recommendation and justification. At that time, the council did not indicate a desire that it was necessary to do that, and perhaps we could wait until the property owners petitioned for annexation. But I think one of the council members or the mayor mentioned that there are a handful of families that are controlling the city's ability to grow and develop, and they didn't think that that was appropriate. So if need be, the council may be taking action as early as the 14th of December here to initiate that process. The annexation is about a 90-day process. The condemnation process is about a 90-day process. Ideally, we would be in the ground with construction sometime in June, perhaps as late as July. It's a pretty easy installation. It's a straight sewer line, about a quarter mile, 20 feet under the ground. There would be nothing that would daylight or be above ground on the properties. Everything would be 20 feet or so below the ground. When they install the pipe, they strip the black dirt that goes in spoils pile A. Then they dig the underground trench that goes into spoils pile B. They install the sewer, they put back in the undersoil, and then they spread the topsoil again over the property. So the property could be farmed immediately. The appraisals did account for a reduction in production of the land, which would be expected for about the first 3 years as the soils would continue to settle. But we did have an outside appraiser do the appraisal. We offered the appraised value, and again, they were rejected. So the council will likely perhaps be taking action, it's hoped, because the families don't want to be in the city limits, and we don't necessarily want them in the city limits if they don't want to. But again, we have an obligation to provide the community with the ability to grow. So that's kind of an explanation, Joe, and a little bit more than probably any of you were expecting. But again, that was also discussed at Monday's goal session, and there's a write-up in the agenda packet about that as well. Anything else?
Russ, if I may, go ahead.
Go
ahead.
Well, I just want to. Okay, I just want to challenge Russ. I think you should go into a kindergarten class and explain how a property can both be outside the city limits and yet completely surrounded by the city limits.
It's called leapfrog development, and it's generally frowned on. So
yeah, I understand it, but when you actually listen, when you think about it, it kind of sounds funny. So that's all.
Yes, it does. Well, go ahead, Ken.
First, a question, and just a quick comment, if I may. Any update relative to the old bowling alley property?
Bowling alley property's been cleared of the debris. The city will be coming in there. I don't know if we started, but we'll be removing, the city will be removing the asphalt and establishing a turf. We will also, as par city policy, be removing the sewer and the water. So the city does not own the property. The property is still owned by iBowl LLC. We just got a judge's order to allow us to go in and abate the nuisance, which we did, and the cost of that abatement will be assembled in a file and would have to be repaid before the property could change hands. I'm still perhaps confident that at some point in the future, the city will be granted, or they quit claim it to us. The participating bank who holds the mortgage has expressed as much at the appropriate time, as they had said, which I believe to mean after insurance settlements are completed. The owner of the property, I believe, would not have, he may have some other issues that would be pressing, and he might be just willing to get rid of it for the $70,000 or so of the removal costs. If the city were to acquire it, the conversation had been that it would be appropriate to consider the rezoning of the property to R2, which would match the Bernie McGuire property, which is just west of the bowling alley. I'll say west of the bowling alley. And it's not really an ideal commercial space, given that you have to come into the residential neighborhood to get access, and there is never ever going to be any access off of Highway 99. So
Thank you. Moving along nicely. The other comment I wanted to make was for Ms. Moulton, if she could pass that along to her husband, please, Pete. Really nice job by city staff in putting the lighting downtown, the holiday lights. They're very, very attractive. So Cindy, if you wouldn't mind passing that along to Pete, if he could then pass it in turn to his staff, I'd appreciate that.
she doesn't have a microphone and she doesn't have a camera, but I bet she's got a grin on her face. So it's always nice to hear kind words, Ken, if you work for a city. So I know it'll be appreciated. And I agree with your thoughts. I thought the plantings looked lovely and the downtown lights look nice. And Ed Lee at the Chambers commented a couple times online about how nice it looks. So
very welcoming for people.
Anything else? Pastor Davis, I might owe you a soda or something. I've got
Well,
5:57. Would anyone be inclined to move the adjournment?
I'll move the adjournment. How about that?
We got a motion by Davis. Is there a second?
Rosso seconds.
We have a second by Ken Rosso. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, anyone? You all have a wonderful evening and stay safe and stay well. And I won't see you before Christmas. So have a happy holiday, everybody.
You too. I just want to know, is that the same cat going back and forth between Shannon and Joe there? Is that the? It's like...
I'll say, at times I saw the cat in Joe's screen and the tail in Shannon.